Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Tip of the Ice-Burgh podcast, brought to you as always by InsideThePenguins.com. I'm your host, Nick Brlansky, joined as always by Nick Horwat. And for the first time since we were 9 years old, Horwat, the Pittsburgh Penguins will miss the Stanley Cup playoffs. They were eliminated from contention last night as the New York Islanders defeated the Montreal Canadiens 4-2 en route to clinching the final playoff spot in the Eastern Conference playoffs. And like we just mentioned, the Penguins will officially miss the playoffs for the first time since 2006. When I say that, Horwat, before we get into the rest of our episode, we're going to talk, which Penguins could be skating their last game tonight against Columbus, which front office members or coaching staff members could be in their last game as a member of the Pittsburgh Penguins tonight. We'll talk about all of that a little bit later. But when I say first missed playoff since 2006, what runs through your mind?
Honestly, the first one is it's the outcome we all saw coming, right? This season. It was a lot of this team doesn't deserve to go. It was a lot of this team should make it because of these reasons. Well, here we are. And I'm not going to say whether we deserved to make it or not. I'm just going to say it was the outcome that we all were expecting once the third 4-game losing streak hit, or once Jeff Carter was realized what his situation was in this team. And once it was realized that this bottom six, this defense, this goaltending, there were so many attributes that went into this expected outcome. I mean, we all knew this wasn't going to last forever. But I don't think we expected it to end in a season where Crosby put up another point per game pace, where Malkin played all 82, where Letang continued to stay at the top of his game despite all of the nonsense, where Rickard Rakell and Jason Zucker both had phenomenal seasons. Not bounce back for Rakell, but bounce back for Zucker, and just a continuation from Rakell, where Jake Gensel had a down year, quote unquote, for 30-something goals. It just wasn't expected to happen like this. It was all of the things that could go wrong did. And we sit here today with this vigil, and, everyone gets a long summer. Everyone can start making tea times, booking vacations, but, I mean, don't we all want to be playing hockey into late April?
Yeah, it is going to be a long summer for most, but I will say this. The Tip of the Ice-Burgh and Penguins to Go will continue into the summer. So we don't take a break here at the Tip of the Ice-Burgh. We continue on, and we'll give you Penguins content through the summer as you would like to consume it, of course. We hope that you stay with us the entire year round, but we shall see what happens with the Stanley Cup playoffs, which we'll be discussing starting on Tuesday's episode. But just to give you a slight understanding of how long it really has been since the Pittsburgh Penguins didn't make the Stanley Cup playoffs, I'm going to say what else was happening back in 2006. Sidney Crosby was just finishing his rookie season at the age of 18 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So there's the Penguins related one. Crazy by Gnarls Barkley was the top song on the music charts during the playoffs of 2006.
Don't you feel crazy?
Watching this team a little bit. Mission Impossible 3 was the #1 box office movie. They're currently getting ready to release the 7th one of the Mission Impossible franchise. Also,
which Fast and Furious were they on back then?
That's one I didn't look up, but I will say another movie franchise had their second iteration released later that summer. Pirates of the Caribbean: Dead Man's Chest, the initial Davy Jones movie, was released later that year. And the Pittsburgh Steelers had just beaten the Seattle Seahawks a few months prior to win Super Bowl 40 in Jerome Bettis' last game. So the last time the Pittsburgh Penguins missed the playoffs was about 3 months after Jerome Bettis played his last NFL game.
It's astonishing thinking of the things that were going on in the world back then. I mean, I saw someone tweet the iPhone wasn't even invented yet. I believe it was Crazy by Gnarls Barkley was the top song in the UK, and I believe the top song in the US was Bad Day by Danny Pewter or whatever. And also, by the way, aren't we all having a bad day? I just like how that lined up perfectly.
Yeah.
I mean, 2006, that's like the year The Office debuted, I believe.
and nobody watched it. I mean, a lot of people watched it, but most people are
Caught on later.
Netflix.
Yeah, they caught on to it later too. I mean, that everyone on that show always talks about how every season they went into the season not knowing if they were going to finish it.
Mm-hmm.
And Friends was like 2 years removed from being on TV. So there's a lot of holy cow, that was a long time ago things that can be discussed with this streak. And it was the longest in North American sports. It was the longest active streak in North American sports. It didn't hit the numbers we all wanted it to. I think we all deep down inside, no matter how brutal it may have looked, wanted to hit that 25 mark like the Red Wings. But I mean, that would take a lot more doing, a lot more pushing.
That's so far down the line that would have been post Crosby, post Malkin. That would have been a very, very difficult task.
But we thought it could have been possible this season, and then we have the discussions that we were probably regardless. We talked about this before too. Whether they missed the playoffs or made the first round and lost, these same discussions that we're going to have today, Monday, and for the weeks to come, we're still going to have.
Mm-hmm.
So we just get to have them a little sooner. I'm a little less prepared for them, but so be it. We're here to have these discussions, and the changes are on the horizon. They have to be.
Oh, yeah. Missing the playoffs is a big deal for the Pittsburgh Penguins, not as much as I feel like it is. Actually, you know what? Probably more so than the Pittsburgh Steelers, because I'm not going to say easier to make the playoffs in the NFL. It's not easier to make the playoffs in the NFL. That's where I was going with it. It's easier to make the playoffs in the NHL than it is in the NFL. So especially when it's been as automatic as it has been for the Pittsburgh Penguins, them missing the playoffs is a massive, massive red flag to ownership is what most people are hoping. But let's move on and talk a little bit about Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin, because both of them have had tremendous seasons. Crosby, 91 points and 33 goals in 81 games played. Evgeny Malkin, over a point per game as well, 83 points, 27 goals in 81 games played. And as you mentioned yesterday to Sir Sidney himself, this is going to be the first time that Crosby and Malkin play all 82 games of a regular season together, and they will still end up missing the playoffs. Here's what Sidney Crosby had to say on that little tidbit.
I didn't even know that. It's nice. I mean, I'd take 81 in a playoff spot, to be honest with you. But it's nice. It's not always an easy thing. There's been some times I think we've got to 81 and maybe rested the last one. So it's not easy to stay healthy. It's a competitive season, so it's a nice thing.
He mentioned it there. It's not easy to stay healthy, and injuries have been something that have plagued the Pittsburgh Penguins throughout the Crosby and Malkin era, whether it's to one of those two guys, hence the reason this is the first time ever that both of them play the entire 82-game season, and also really to the rest of the team. Yes, the Penguins dealt with injuries. Yes, for a while there in the latter stages of the season, 4 of their initial 6 defensemen were on the injured reserve, but relatively, the Penguins were healthy this season, more so than they have been in years past, and they still couldn't get it done. It stings to know that. It stings to know that the big 3, well, Crosby and Malkin at least, stayed healthy. Jake Gensel stayed healthy. Jason Zucker stayed healthy. Rickard Rakell played in almost every game. I'm pretty sure he actually has played in every game. Same goes for Brian Rust. To have the top tier of players, except for maybe Letang, all play the entire season and still not make the playoffs is a tough pill to swallow for the Pittsburgh Penguins.
It is. It's probably the hardest part of the season. I mean, so far through 81 games, Crosby, Malkin, Rakell, Dumoulin have all played 81 games. Dumoulin, for what it's worth, has been healthy, and that's not something we could have said a few years ago. It's just not. He was an injured player for a long time. Brian Rust has only missed 1 game. Jeff Carter's only missed 3. Zucker and Gensel have only missed 4. We've had a relatively healthy season for what it's worth, considering how battered and bruised this team usually is. And when the injuries came for this team, they came all at once, right? It was all the defensemen at once. It was a lot of the bottom 6 forwards at once. I mean, there was that point in the season, though, where we were discussing, hey, this is the longest streak of a fully healthy roster that we've had since It was a longer
like 6
streak.
games, but yeah.
It was a longer streak than our playoff run, though. It was for the first time since like 2001 that we've had this many straight games of fully healthy rosters. So it was a healthier season that we still managed to get this kind of downfall. And it sucks. And, that line of I'd rather have 81 in a playoff spot is exactly what I expected Sid to say. But I'm glad he said it. I'm glad we got it. And he's right. I think we would all rather have that too. And the other part of his quote that he said, he thought there was points where, maybe they played 81 and then rested for the postseason. I don't think they did. I don't even think that was the situation. I think looking back at some of the numbers, at least, I lined up obviously the 82. The three of them have only played 82 3 times, or the two of them have only done it 3 times between the two of them. I don't think it lined up well enough for it to be an 81 even. I think there was an injury somewhere along the way every time someone completed a season. So that shows how bad and bruised those guys are too.
Mm-hmm. I know for a fact that Sidney Crosby has sat the last game of the regular season, but I don't know if Malkin has.
I know Crosby has too. Yeah, like I said, like I told you before, Malkin played his 82 games in back-to-back years, 07, 08. Don't remember what happened is that the Crosby high ankle sprain year?
I believe it was, because it was the first year they went to the Cup Finals.
Yeah, and then 08, 09, Malkin again played all 82. That was his heart year. I don't know. Oh, no, it wasn't his heart year. Came in second. No. It was his Art Ross year. But regardless, I'm getting off topic here. I just don't think those lined up either. I mean, Malkin has played well under 80 for a majority of his career. So there's that.
Yeah. The one injury that did really hurt the Pittsburgh Penguins the most this year, and it's going to be the biggest what if, or one of the biggest what ifs about the Pittsburgh Penguins season in 2022-23 is, what if Tristan Jarry didn't have the hip injury? Because that is, as far as we know, what you can tie to all of his missed his missed games. We don't know if it was connected to his physical issues earlier in the season. I would imagine, considering they called it a chronic hip injury, that's what was plaguing him early in the season, and then it just escalated to the point where on period 1 of the Winter Classic, it reached a breaking point, and from then on, he wasn't the same. We started to see him get a little bit better here in recent weeks, but then Tuesday's game, once again, just a poor performance from Tristan Jarry in a gotta-have-it moment. So you don't know how much of that was the injury. Apparently, he's been healthy. That's what we're being told from everybody. But if that is the case, then once again, he can't stand the spotlight, and he fell apart when the game mattered most.
Yep, that's going to be one of those discussions we have all season, all off season, all summer. Just until something happens with him, it's going to be the discussion. It's probably going to be a name we bring up every episode at least once.
Yeah.
Just what do we do with Jarry? What happened to Jarry? What does his future look like? What kind of things does he say at locker cleanout day in a couple days? There's going to be a lot of discussions around a lot of players, and he's going to be the focal point of, I would say, most of it. Just there's going to be discussions around Jeff Carter, yes, but there's going to be discussions around, until decisions are made, Jason Zucker and Brian Dumoulin. But until decisions are made, there's not much we can say. Tristan Jarry, though, there's the big what if. There's the injuries. There's the this. There's the that. It's going to be the discussion of the summer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, certainly going to be one of the premier areas that the Pittsburgh Penguins need to address, whether that be with re-signing Tristan Jarry or going in another direction via either trade or free agency. So we will talk about that, obviously, as things come up during the offseason. We're going to take a quick break right now. When we come back, our lasting impressions of the 2022-23 Pittsburgh Penguins with one game to go. Welcome back to the Tip of the Ice-Burgh podcast, brought to you as always by InsideThePenguins.com. The Pittsburgh Penguins still have one game remaining on their schedule. Later this evening, they take on the Columbus Blue Jackets over there in Ohio, expecting a large contingency of Penguins fans, despite the fact that the Penguins will be missing the playoffs for the first time since 2006. But Horwat, before we talk a little bit about the players and who could be playing their last game in a Penguins uniform, your lasting impressions of the 2022-23 Penguin season with one game remaining will be what?
Oh man, it's hard to say. You look at it as the end of an era, but it's not the end of the era.
It's really not. It's an end of a mini little era in Penguins hockey, where I would say it's not even the streak. Like, the streak is something, an overarching storyline throughout the Crosby and Malkin era. But I would also argue that, the era is Crosby and Malkin, and it's not making the playoffs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's the end of that 16-year era of always having extra hockey to play, always having more to look forward to in the spring. I think this season, you just put it as it was tumultuous. There was a lot of stuff that didn't need to happen. There was a lot of, I'm not going to say turmoil necessarily, but there was a lot of unhappy campers from October until now. That first 7-game losing streak started in October.
Yeah.
Even there were points then where I'm sure there's people questioning the validity of their playoff status in October, where you had that discussion and then you remembered who's on this team and go, Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin aren't going to let that happen. Funny thing is, they still did not let that happen.
Yeah.
Even in the Chicago game, there's a lot of people saying that, oh, Sid didn't do enough in the Chicago game. Sid didn't do this. Evgeny Malkin didn't do that. Okay, well, Evgeny Malkin scored in that game, tied the game up. We thought we had it back. Sidney Crosby had 7 shots at one point. I think he had 7 shots like the first 2 periods. That man was doing everything he could to put the Penguins in good standing in that playoff race. He had 8 shots and goal in the entire game. 8. Is that a season high? Please say it's a season high. Because if it is, then that's just there's nothing you can say about. He had 9 against Nashville. Of course he did. But he had 8. That's a season high. Tied the season high for him. Don't know what more he could have done. Peter Mrazek stood on his head. I'm not even going to say the Penguins got goalied because that third period was a disaster anyway. But it just goes to show that he did everything he could. This is not on Crosby. This is not on Malkin. This downfall is not on those 3. It's not even on the top 6. There's a lot more that goes into this. So, my lasting impression of this season is anger. There it is. I found it because it finally just flew out of me. I'm angry, and it's not at Crosby. It's not at Malkin. It's not at Letang. It is at a couple of names in the bottom 6. It is at a few in the defensive core, goaltending, front office.
Most of the team
people to be angry at.
Yeah, most of the team.
Yes.
That's the problem. It's not just one issue. It's not just 2 issues. It's most of the team that has been the issue this season. That's not my lasting impression. I will say on the Crosby thing from Tuesday's game, I do think he could have done better. I'm not going to say he didn't try. 8 shots on goal is fine, but how many of those shots on goal were just throwing them at the net? I get it. You have to do it to a certain extent, but I don't think anybody on that team really got any great chances against Peter Mrazek. And you could say, yeah, Malkin scored, but no. That's on the 4th power play opportunity. That's the first power play that they actually did anything. Yeah. So while I don't blame them for missing the playoffs, I'm not going to say they're absolved from that performance on Tuesday because nobody on that team should be.
Yeah, you're right. And I'm not even saying that, everyone was perfect. I'm not going to say Sid was perfect in that game. His 8 shots were 8 shots. Some of them may have been duds. There was a few, though, that I can remember were great chances. So, there's the breakaway chance. There was the one-time chance. There was a good number of chances that Sid had to do something, but
he did.
I'll digress there. And anger also may be the response of, we're a spoiled fan base. I'm allowed to be a little angry too. I don't know.
You're 12 hours removed from finding out that they're going to miss the playoffs for the first time since you were 9 years old. There's expected to be like it is a quick turnaround, and that's why we do it, because it's raw reaction. We don't have 3 days to sit down and think about it. We just come out and we talk about it. But here's the thing: what Crosby did on Tuesday, while he had opportunities, he missed his opportunities, and that's my lasting impression of this entire team is missed opportunities. An entire year of them, countless blown third period leads. When it comes down to it, the Pittsburgh Penguins are going to miss the playoffs by, if they win tonight, they miss the playoffs by 1 point. You blew how many third period leads, especially 3 of them to the New York Islanders, the team that makes the playoffs over you. Losses to the bottom half teams that would have severely improved your playoff chances just in the past couple of weeks. Chicago being the most memorable, of course. That's going to be the one that sticks out in everybody's mind, because if they won that game, right now they'd be sitting in a position where, hey, we beat Columbus and we're in the playoffs. So I get that. But not showing up against Detroit, not showing up against Montreal a couple weeks ago. There's a lot of these instances where the Pittsburgh Penguins just did not show up prepared to play a hockey game in a game that if they would have shown up, probably would have won, or at the very least, probably would have gotten a point, which would have put them over the hump. While I wish it was a year of milestones, and that's what I would remember, right? Like Crosby, 1,500 points. Malkin and Letang each hit their 1,000th game. Jason Zucker had an incredible season, one of his best seasons of his career, and he's one of my favorite players on this team. But the lasting impression is going to be missed opportunities led to a missed playoff for the first time since 2006. And it's unfortunate, but that's what's going to be remembered about the 2022-23 Penguins.
It is. Yeah, it is. The lasting impression, like ask me this again in a week, I might have a different answer.
Yeah, of course.
We got eliminated 12 hours ago. And I slept for most of that. So we haven't had time to digest this whole, and we still have a game to play. We still have something the work isn't done yet either. Like that's the even sadder part. It's, there's a lot of emotions. Anger is one of them. Depression is one of them. I feel like all stages of grief are being had by many Penguins fans right now, and it's going to be okay. I feel like this team can come back next season, retooled, I guess I should say, and be better.
I mean, the bar is low in certain areas of this lineup to be better.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's not like this team was bad this year either. I mean, they're mediocre, right? It's not like they were bad. If they were bad, we'd be discussing, all right, what are our odds for Connor Bedard? We weren't bad. We had good spurts. We had good runs. Had one good run. And we saw everyone at one point or another, minus a handful of names, namely Teddy Bluger comes to mind, ironically, who just couldn't ever put it together. Everyone had some spark at some point. Bottom six, I know we discussed, is sucked a lot this season, but I think at least in the first handful of games, I think Jeff Carter had a couple of goals. Dan Heinen had enough oomph to get to the promotion to the first line. Mm-hmm. At some point or another, everyone on this team did something. Ultimately, everything else settled in. It's Penguins hockey. This season's Penguins hockey just defined, right? It's the anger, it's the disappointing, it's the missed opportunities.
Yep. Missed opportunities is the one that really is going to stick out in my mind. Even if you ask me in a week, if you ask me in a month, I'm going to say the same thing. Yeah, missed opportunities, because how can you not? I mean, what was it? 17, 18, 19 blown leads, half of those or maybe more in the third period of the game. You have to be able to close out games to make the playoffs. You have to be able to close out games to be anything in this league. Pittsburgh Penguins just weren't able to do that. But they do have one last chance to leave a lasting impression, although I'm pretty sure most people will think of the Chicago Blackhawks game as the end of the season. They do have one more game tonight against the Columbus Blue Jackets. It'll be the first game of the Big Three era where they're playing a game knowing it's the last game of the season without the playoffs.
It's always fitting when the big moments are the penultimate moment, right?
Mm-hmm.
Big Ben's retirement game. Oh, he had another game afterwards.
Yeah.
Penguins eliminated from the playoffs. They had another game afterwards. It's always fitting this way.
It's interesting, though, because the only other game of the Big Three era where they knew it was definitely the last game of the season was Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Finals in 2009 against the Detroit Red Wings. Very different feel to that game than to Penguins Blue Jackets Game 82, when neither team is going to be making the playoffs and one team is looking to try to clinch the last spot in the league and the best odds to take away Connor Bedard. But I will ask you this, Horwat. Which players will be skating in their last game as a Penguin? I'm going to go down this list of names. Just give me a yes or no. We'll go through it, and then we'll move on to the next segment because there's a lot to talk about in that next segment. So I'm just going to name the player. You tell me if it's his last game as a Pittsburgh Penguin. Dmitry Kulikov.
1,000% yes.
Yes, I agree. Danton Heinen.
Probably yes.
I'm going to say yes. Josh Archibald.
That one's questionable. I feel like probably, though.
Probably no?
Or probably yes. Probably though.
Probably though. Okay. I'm going to say no. I think they end up bringing Josh Archibald back. Ryan Poehling.
Oh, no. He'll be back.
I agree. No, that's not his last game. Nick Bonino.
Sadly, yes.
Yes, I agree. It's probably his last game.
Yeah.
Mikhail Granlund has 2 years left on his contract at $5 million. Will this be his last game as a Penguin?
Depends on who's in ownership or who's in management. I bet he comes back. I bet no, this is not his last game, sadly.
I think this is his last game as a member of the Pittsburgh Penguins tonight.
Ooh.
I do. Because I think anybody that has watched him, other than maybe Ron Hextall, because he's the one that has, his stamp of approval on the move. I think anybody that's watched him over the past 21 games, when they come in, if they're the new general manager, they're going to say, I don't need that guy on my roster. Right? I think they'll try to move on from Mikhail Granlund, so I think this will be his last game as a Penguin. Jeff Carter.
Oh, it's definitely not his last game.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think there's a way you're getting out of that contract. Jason Zucker.
Oh man, I hope it's not his last game. I don't think it is. He's played too well to not deserve a new deal here.
When you're trying to restructure this team, there's going to be some tough decisions that they have to make. Jason Zucker deserves the bag this summer. Penguins aren't going to be able to give it to him.
Probably not.
Last game as a Penguin tonight. Brian Dumoulin.
Oh yeah, it's been we knew this was gonna be his last season here, like all year.
Nope.
Oh, were you bringing him back?
Career season. I'm not bringing him back.
Oh.
I am not bringing him back. But $4.1 million is clearly not what he's going to be asking to come back. He's played his entire career in Pittsburgh. I guarantee you he's going to want to continue to play his career in Pittsburgh alongside Chris Letang. I think he re-signs for less money, but I do think you see Brian Dumoulin back on this team next year.
I'm going to hit you with the same response you gave me for Zucker. When you want to rebuild this team, that's one of the guys that has to go. It just is. I don't know who's out there to replace him. Oh, wait, Marcus Patterson's out there to replace him.
Yeah, well, the only difference between those two is Brian Dumoulin's going to be asking for less money than he currently makes, and Jason Zucker can probably ask for more. Already made about $1 million more.
Hey, you know what? I give Zucker the Dumoulin contract and then add a couple bucks to it. We're gonna have a little bit of cap space this summer.
Zucker the Dumoulin contract. You want him to take a $1 million pay cut?
I said add a couple bucks to it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I feel like Jason Zucker, the only way he comes back is if he wants to come back, and there's a chance that he could want to go and cash out on his last opportunity at a really good contract because he had almost a career year and stayed healthy through it. Whereas Brian Dumoulin, it's almost like the Danton Heinen thing where, yeah, he might be able to make a couple more bucks somewhere else, but why do that and change everything in your life when you could come back to Pittsburgh? So I feel like Dumoulin would take less money, maybe even, I mean, I'm not going to say he's going to say I'm going to be a league minimum player, but I think he would probably come back at under the $2 million cap hit. Whether that's worth it is a discussion for another day, because there's one last player that I haven't mentioned that I want to throw into this segment here. Tristan Jarry, is he playing his last game as a Pittsburgh Penguin tonight?
I think so. I
agree.
I know and this is going to be a little diatribe and then we can move on. That third goal against Chicago, I know it wasn't as egregious as the mistake from the double overtime period against the New York Islanders, but it had similar aura, had similar vibes to it, right? He's out of the net. What's he doing out of the net? Oh, he misplayed something, and it's in the back of our net. I think that play, I think that play sealed it. I think that play in particular, I know it wasn't as bad as the New York Islanders mishap. I know it's not as bad as some of the other things he's done this year, but I don't even know if that's like, I'm not a goalie. I have never played goalie. I don't know if that's the proper play on that kind of situation. It didn't feel like it though, right? Any play that ends up in the back of your net isn't the proper play in that situation. I feel like something may have. I don't know what went wrong, but I feel like that sealed the deal here. He's done.
Mm-hmm. I think that it is his last game as a member of the Pittsburgh Penguins, and you mentioned that goal, and that is a big reason why, because that was the dagger on the Penguin season.
Yeah.
If you're down 2-1, you believe the Pittsburgh Penguins can get one goal, but when you go down 3-1 after giving up 2 straight goals, after how hard the Pittsburgh Penguins worked just to get one, that was the dagger on the Pittsburgh Penguins season. They weren't scoring 2 more goals in that game.
20-something seconds apart, too.
Yeah.
It wasn't even a full half minute. 20-some seconds later, a puck gets dumped in. Like I said, I don't know the play. I don't know
it wasn't dumped in. I mean, Athanasiou came in and shot the puck, and he made a save on the first one, but he was just out of position to make the second save.
Yeah.
And it just looked bad. Like the optics were awful.
Yeah. There was something up there. It's, like I said, it had similar vibes to that errant pass straight to, why do I forget the name? But
Josh Bailey.
To Josh Bailey. Just, it gave that kind of vibe. Just have it. Mm-hmm. Have it. And when we needed him most.
Yeah. I'm not going to say that he's 100% gone. I do believe that he probably is. But at the same time, I do think there's still a chance that they say, you know what? He was injured most of this season. They're going to allocate a lot of that. Now, is he going to make as much money as he would have if he came out and he played well this season? No. But you look at the other players that the same conversation happened last offseason. Jason Zucker. Well, should they trade him? He can't stay healthy, so why keep him? He comes back, has almost a career season. Evgeny Malkin. The people that were pounding the table for them to move on from Malkin and sign Vinny Trocheck and sign Andrew Kopp or whoever were saying, why would you sign Evgeny Malkin? He hasn't played over 70 games since whatever year. Well, he's played 81 games this season and scored 83 points, right? So there's recent history of just because there's one injury one year, or maybe even a history or string of injuries over a couple of seasons, does not deter at least this front office, and really around the NHL doesn't deter many front offices, because they don't take that unless it's something that, hey, you're trying to come back currently from an injury. That's one where it's like, maybe they won't, but Tristan Jarry is going into the offseason pretty much healthy.
Yeah.
So I do think that there's still a chance. If I had to put a percentage on it, and this is probably going to get clipped from somewhere when they re-sign him, but I'm going to say it's probably 80% chance that he is gone, 20% chance that he stays.
Yeah. I don't know who we could get in replacement, but I agree with you.
Yeah. So that is the players that we believe could be playing their last game tonight as a member of the Pittsburgh Penguins. But as we've mentioned several times on this episode, the players are not the only people to blame. We'll talk about the front office and the coaching staff to close out this show right after the break. Welcome back to the Tip of the Ice-Burgh podcast, brought to you as always by InsideThePenguins.com. Horwat, we've talked the players, we've talked lasting impressions, we've talked just in general what happened the last time the Penguins missed the playoffs. Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Man's Chest, to me, is still the best Pirates of the Caribbean movie, and there's no question about it. I hope you concur to that.
Me? I've never seen one.
Okay, well then, you know what? This is the last episode of Tip of the Ice-Burgh podcast, because I don't know if I can go on with you, considering you haven't seen Pirates of the Caribbean. I am appalled.
I feel like you've known this. I'm not a movie guy.
I know you're not a movie guy, but come on, Pirates of the Caribbean, like, I don't know. That's appalling to me.
I know of them. Like, I mean, there's that.
Okay,
I know of
well,
them. I've
I would-
seen bits and pieces, obviously, because
I would hope you know of them. It's one of the most popular movie franchises in our lifetime. But let's move on from that topic right there, because I don't know. I'm upset now, Horwat. I'm more upset about this than I am about the Penguins missing the playoffs. No, I'm just kidding. But we're gonna do something called Fired or Free From It. Which of these front office / coaching members will take the brunt of the consequences of this season and of this fact that they've missed the playoffs? Let's start with Ron Hextall. Horwat, is he fired or is he free from it?
He's got to be fired. Got to be. There's already a lot of discussion. I mean, the second the Islanders won last night, there was already tweets of he should be fired by morning, and they're not totally wrong. I'd at least expect him to get out of locker room cleanout day, and then we'll see what happens in the following 48 hours.
Yeah. I don't know what is going to happen this offseason. There's going to be, we thought last offseason was a transformative offseason for the Pittsburgh Penguins. This offseason could match, if not become way more of a time of change for the Pittsburgh Penguins.
Yeah.
I do concur that Ron Hextall is probably the first person that's going to be, fired because of this, I would imagine.
Yeah. So here's the other thing too, as it's starting to get spread around, because Frank Saravalli put it up probably just a couple minutes ago. That excuse me. In one of his stories he just put up, sources said there were strong indications Fenway Sports Group was beginning to put the wheels in motion for a complete change in Penguins leadership, which likely also includes President of Hockey Operations Brian Burke. So the wheels may already be in motion for this move of Hextall and Berkey taking the plunge.
All I ask is that they wait to do it until this episode is up and has some decent numbers.
Like I said, I would assume
let it be after the season, which I'm guaranteeing you they're not going to fire them right before the last game of the year.
No, like I said, I bet they get past locker room clean out day and they go from there.
If the wheels are already in motion, it might be tomorrow morning.
That's fair too.
Because why are you going to trot the GM out there that you're planning on firing to answer questions about the future of this franchise?
Because I would assume and probably hope that a lot of the questions he gets asked are about this season.
True.
Because let's be honest, everyone in that media room, we are all pretty much well aware and want to see him not come back this next year, right? So I don't even think there would be too many questions about the future of this team. I'm sure there might be a couple, but I'm sure they're going to start with, if you're still here. I'm sure everyone wants to.
I don't know if people are going to blatantly outright come out and say, if you still have a job, what are you planning on doing there, Ronnie? I do think
letting that one fly on accident, but that being said, no, I just don't foresee a ton of questions regarding the future when if he takes the stand. I do expect
putting him on trial.
He's got to go to the podium. He's on stand. Yeah. And yes, pretty much, because it will be because let's be real, the players, yes, didn't perform, but he was the one that put most of them together. He's on stand. He's on trial here. We have to know what he thought of this season. Because how many times did he say, we like our team. We like our team on paper. We think we're a Stanley Cup contender. Here we are on the outside looking in, about to play a meaningless game 82. You're right. He might not make it to clean out day, but still, there's a lot of things that need to happen.
Yeah. The decision-making that he is portrayed over this past season, or really his entire tenure here in Pittsburgh, has been highly questionable at pretty much every turn. Mm-hmm. The only move that he has made that has had a positive outcome at this moment is trading for / signing Rickard Rakell.
Yep. Yeah, that's the biggest one. The core is another, but I think anyone in the right mind would have done that, you hope.
Yeah, that's the
Although,
free space. I think we've mentioned that before. That was the free space.
it is, but we have to remember how close Malkin was to leaving.
Oh yeah, but he almost messed that up, especially considering what Malkin's been able to turn around and do this season.
Yeah.
But he didn't, so I'm not going to hold it against him. Although
Mhm.
it was handled poorly, he got the job done. You know,
Yeah.
in that instance. So yeah, you brought the core back. That's the free space. You also re-signed and acquired Ricard Raquel. That's the
Bonus.
one that I will say, okay, cool. There's your golden goose right there. But you also missed the playoffs, which kind of wipes that out of really any reasonable issues there. But you mentioned Brian Burke there as well. I do believe, and I concur with that reporting, that if Hextall is gone, Burke is gone as well. They came in as a package deal. They're going to go out as a package deal, especially considering maybe Fenway Sports Group knows whose fingers have been on which triggers for which, roster moves, which contracts, which trades. Nobody else does, right? And I would imagine that Brian Burke is not going to sit there and watch Ron Hextall and not agree with the moves that he's making. He's his direct superior. So I don't think he's going to sit there and give Hextall carte blanche, especially when some of the moves have gone as poorly as they have. I don't think he would have continued to sit there and you talk about, the longevity of this, which has only been 2 years. I don't think he would have sat there at the trade deadline and let Hextall do what he did there if he didn't already have his stamp of approval.
Probably, but it's just such an awkwardly built team.
Yeah.
I got nothing much.
So I think we both say that Burke and Hextall are fired and not free from it.
Yeah, as much as I threw that idea out probably 2 weeks ago at this point of Burke stepping in as GM just because it's an in-house maneuver and sometimes those are easy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see that happening either anymore. Don't know why or how, but I don't know what he did this year. No one knows what he did this year. So
yeah. Yeah, it's certainly interesting. That's probably going to be the lead story going into the summer because you can't do anything else until you figure that out. But there's plenty of stuff player-wise, contract-wise, that is going to need to be figured out this summer. They're going to need an overhaul in that bottom six. They're going to need to change some things up on the defense. What's going to happen to the goaltending? How many of the top six are returning? Like, do you end up trading one of Rust or Raquel, or how does that work out? I know that's not something that people want to broach, but that's the subject that is probably going to come up this summer because they're going to need flexibility to be able to try to recreate something of a playoff contender around Malkin, Crosby, and Letang. So that's obviously all for the offseason. But before we even get to that, the question and the decision has to be made about Ron Hextall and Brian Burke. But there's other people as well that could be on the line here. One of them, and I've seen it a couple times, Mike Sullivan, the head coach of this team, probably considered the best head coach in this team's history when it comes to what he's been able to do over time. I think everybody holds Badger Bob Johnson to a very high standard, despite him only being here for 1 year for unfortunate circumstances, of course. We all know what ended up happening there, and we wish we could have seen what happened with Badger Bob Johnson over a longer period of time, but we just weren't afforded that time.
Mm-hmm.
But Mike Sullivan, does he get fired this summer, or is he free from it? And then when does he become hot seat eligible is what I'm going to say, if he's not fired this summer.
So the idea that he signed a contract extension, to me, I could be totally wrong about this, but to me means he's not going to be on a hot seat until that deal starts. Something about firing a guy before his contract even kicks in doesn't sound right or fit well in my head. Like I said, I don't know what the ramifications are for firing a guy before his contract starts. So I think at this juncture, he's free. He is going to be back next year for a couple different reasons. One of them being that contract. Two, Fenway Sports Group loves the guy, I think. I think if I'm not mistaken, when they came in, they said there are two names that are safe. Sidney Crosby and Mike Sullivan. At the time, that was a wild statement because Sullivan could have been on a hot seat then. And now, he kind of recouped his assets. He showed that he is still a very good coach. He should have been Jack Adams winner last year. Forgot about that one, didn't you guys? This season was a little more stubbornness from him, but he had to play the cards he was dealt. Perfectly understandable. At the same time, maybe having a little more push this way or that way. I don't foresee Sullivan going anywhere. I think he's free. I don't think he's the seat might be warm. I don't see the hot seat kicking in until the new contract starts, though, just because contracts. I don't know what you can and cannot do.
It is now 5 seasons for Mike Sullivan without a playoff series win. This
You're
for
right.
a guy that started his career with the Pittsburgh Penguins with 9 straight playoff series victories, including 2 Stanley Cups, of course. So I don't think he's absolved from this. He's obviously taking heat in the fan base. He's obviously taking heat in the media. But there's something that you said there that harkens back to a conversation that we had probably a month ago. You said he had to play the hand that he was dealt. Still think there's a chance you see him become the dealer. I still think there's a chance that, yes, Fenway Sports Group loves him. They said he's very safe whenever they came in. I don't know if he has interest in this. Nobody's going to know because I don't think anybody's going to ask him that question when he's currently the head coach of an NHL hockey team. But I don't think he's fired this offseason. I don't think he's done being the bench boss of the Pittsburgh Penguins. Of course, he still has 4 more years to go in his contract. But that contract could be restructured to make him the general manager of the Pittsburgh Penguins because he's still one of the best coaches in the National Hockey League. Whether or not he's had a good performance this season or not, he still remains one of the best coaches in the National Hockey League. And I understand we've seen some of the better coaches in the NHL get fired in recent years. Bruce Cassidy from Boston comes to mind last season, and look what they were able to do with a new voice there. I do think that this locker room needs a new voice, but I do think Mike Sullivan should remain with the organization. Now, if he has interest in it, it's hard to tell if he's going to be a good general manager, but usually good coaches have good hockey minds, which means they're good player evaluators.
Right.
So with Barry Trotz heading to the front office of the Nashville Predators next season, I could foresee in the next couple of seasons, maybe as early as next season, Mike Sullivan makes the move to the front office after next year.
As dual title or just
as
GM?
General manager. I don't think in the modern era you're going to see somebody be coach GM. I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah,
but
that's
he's going to probably pick his successor. Excuse me. And I wouldn't be surprised if it was Todd Reardon. But
that's what I was about to say.
I also don't think it should be Todd Reardon. But that's a discussion for whenever this hypothetical situation comes to fruition, if it does. But I could see Mike Sullivan going from somebody who has to deal with the deck he was dealt to being the dealer in general.
I really like that now. You're right. I do think
I don't know how it would work out, but I could see that being a possibility considering how much Fenway Sports Group has backed Sullivan since he came here, and still the fact that they do need a new voice in that locker room.
Yeah. I don't totally hate the idea. It would take some moving and shaking. It would take some convincing, I'm sure. Just tell Mike, hey, it's less media availability. I'm sure he's all for it already. And we all know that Mike Sullivan wanted Jacob Chikrin on this team.
He did, yeah.
As for how much Ron Hextall wanted him on this team, we'll never know. But, I mean, that already tells him Mike Sullivan's a better player evaluator than Hextall, right? Just that right there. That one instance of Mike Sullivan saying, hey, this guy, rather than the guys you gave me. That already tells me he's a better player evaluator. Now, obviously, scouts go into that conversation too. Mm-hmm. But those are small names that do big roles that we don't understand and don't know who's going what, where, who, how, when, why. Mm-hmm. But as of right now, I would say, yeah, Mike Sullivan as GM is an interesting statement and something down the line I could see. I like it. But he's going to be around next year's coach. That's for sure.
Yeah, he will be the head coach of the Pittsburgh Penguins next season. Like, no matter who comes in as general manager, they're not going to get the green light to fire Mike Sullivan. That's not going to happen.
No.
They're not.
And he shouldn't be. I think he's still one of the best coaches in the league. Was he a little stubborn this year? Yeah, it's just a hard year. But I mean, he's a year removed from what should have been legitimate Jack Adams contention. So,
yeah, people will point to the Jeff Carter situation, the Mikael Granlund situation, but was really realistically able to take one of those guys out? Like, was Teddy Bluger that much better than Jeff Carter? No, he never was this season. Was Ryan Poehling? Not until the end of the year. Like, you can look at it right now and say, yeah, Ryan Poehling's much better than Jeff Carter. He is now. He wasn't all season. Yeah, he wasn't like that all season. So, it's a tough situation that Sullivan was placed in. Do I think he handled it perfectly? No. I think he made several mistakes this season. And I think just in general that the message might be running a little stale with this current group of players, but we'll see what happens next season. I do think that he's still a hockey mind that the Penguins would benefit from having around. And I do think that in that capacity, it's difficult to say whether or not Jacob Chychrun would have been the best move, but I can tell you right now that Jacob Chychrun would have been a better move than all three of the moves the Penguins made. Like Kulikov, Bonino, and Granlund, none of the three of them made any impact. And while Chychrun did get injured when he went over to Ottawa, you can never really tell that. But knowing in Sullivan's case that, hey, what's going to be easier, fixing an entire bottom six or getting a top pairing defenseman and trying to make sure that we give up less goals per game to allow our top six to take things over? That's the mindset that I would align with. And that's the mindset that it seems like Mike Sullivan had going into the trade deadline. He just wasn't in a position to do anything about it.
Yeah, let's also not forget Ron Hextall wanted to trade away 2 first-round picks and Jason Zucker for JT Miller before an $8 million full no move clause contract kicks in.
Yeah,
we didn't discuss that enough, by the way. That's a discussion for next episode all of a sudden, but we didn't talk about that enough because I don't want JT Miller anywhere near this team. That's just me. I don't care how many points he scores. $8 million.
Not with that contract. Yeah,
not with that contract. Not with that contract. And not getting rid of Jason Zucker and 2 firsts for it. You're getting rid of 2 firsts for someone else. And you're not getting rid of Jason Zucker. Sorry.
Yeah.
Anyway, now that could be a whole discussion for another day. Oh my goodness.
That could be, we're going to have some slow times in July that we'll probably break that one out.
I mean, we're going to have slow times next week.
There's still the playoffs. We talk about the playoffs in this show because the playoffs in hockey are some of the greatest entertainment in the entire universe. But Kings, come on.
Kings.
Literally the last of the teams that I want to, what? Islanders. The second to last team that I would like to see raise the cup is the Kings.
Why? They're fun this year. They're not a boring defensive team anymore.
They're the least fun still of that entire Western Conference.
That's very not true. Didn't Nashville make it in?
No.
No? Oh, no, they were about to lose out. That's right.
I'm pretty sure Winnipeg made it in instead.
That could be interesting.
Exactly. So this is a conversation we can have off the air, but that's going to do it for this episode. We're not going to talk about Vellucci and Reardon because they kind of follow with Sullivan. If Sullivan stays, I see both of them potentially leaving. But, if my psychic powers work and Mike Sullivan ends up being the general manager, I could definitely see Todd Reardon being the guy tabbed to replace them. So that's going to do it for this episode of the Tip of the Ice-Burgh podcast. One last game, guys. We'll watch it, have fun with it. Some of us might watch the Pirates instead, but that's going to do it for this one. Yeah, it's going to do it for this one. We will see you guys next time.